Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pure Presence Live Book Club. And I'm your host, Bill Free. And we have our special guest today, Jenny Beal. Hello, Jenny.
Hello, Bill. Hello, everyone.
Yes. Thank you for being here with us, everyone. And we'll give everyone a minute to come into the room. I recognize the last couple of calls that it takes about a minute before the room actually populates. And as we wait for the room to populate, I'm going to go ahead and give a brief introduction of our guest, Jenny Beal. She has quite an amazing track, almost a parallel track to Rupert's, from what I can tell. And it's just remarkable how similar our guest Jenny's track is with Rupert. But I'm just going to give the highlights of her introduction to Rupert as it is described as it's in her bio. But Jenny, after following in really some interesting teachers, the same ones as Rupert, really, and in a few of his teachers, with the ideas of P.D. Ouspensky and then also Francis Rolls. But when she found Rupert, following much study and a wide-ranging search, in early 2014, Jenny decided to see if Rupert Spira, who was holding meetings in Oxford, could give her the help that she was needed or that she was looking for. And when she asked Rupert to show her the way back to that earlier blissful state that she describes in her bio, he instead showed her the way forward to what she was really looking for, the permanent, imperturbable peace of her true nature. No words could even begin to express the gratitude she feels to Rupert for his loving guidance. And I love that description, Jenny, and I love your the way you present yourself to all of us as a fellow companion on this awakening experience, this experience that we're all looking for. Everyone on the planet is looking for this experience in some form, and to find it in the person of Rupert Spira, and to have such a love for, I mean, he's such a gentle, beautiful soul, such a beautiful man. And the way he presents his pointing is so gentle and it's so authentic and it's so precise that how can you not love this guy? So, like, it's just like, come here, give me a hug. I just want to hug this guy, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It was amazing the first time I went to one of Rupert's meetings. It was just an incredible experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't have the way I was introduced to Rupert was the way most people are, which is on video on YouTube, on some kind of it's usually a video introduction to a teacher like Rupert or Muji or one of the well-known teachers around the world, Adyashanti or Gangaji. But in my introduction, I was looking at non-dual teachers and really looking at where Muji was sharing, and Rupert just happened to be one of those teachers. And as soon as I found Rupert, it's like, okay, I'm done. I'm done looking for a teacher to help explain non-duality or Advaita Vedanta or the direct path. He presents himself in such a, or not just himself, he presents the embodiment of this understanding in such a clear, precise, articulate way. And he sort of takes, it's almost like he takes understanding of a complex idea and he says, well, look at it this way. If you look at it this way, and then he takes that entry point and sort of describes how to understand something, and then he says, well, or you could look at it this other way, and he comes in from this other direction, and then another question might come in, and he goes, well, it's kind of like this, and he gives you examples of clear understanding, so that you spend a little bit of time with Rupert, and then also when you sit in the experience of one of his retreats or some of his meditations that are available on YouTube, and he has some that are free. He has downloadable YouTube or downloadable MP3s that are meditations. They also bring you into that open mind experience, so that you're available to hear, to listen, and to as you describe in your bio, to really self-realize what all of us have available, and it's not exclusive to any special teacher. It's available to everyone that is open to listen and to have the experience of a simple pointing, right? Yeah. And this week we're looking at chapter 7. It's actually, this is, they're all my favorite, but this is my favorite chapter. It's the experience of being aware. And of course, it must be Rupert's favorite too, because he wrote another book on being aware of being aware. And I was talking to Jenny a little bit before the show, and I'm thinking that I might do another book study. I'll probably skip a month and just allow everyone to settle in where they are. But I think I might do this book as another book study when we're finished with the nature of consciousness. I love having a practice where I read the book, and we're looking at the nature of consciousness, as all of you know. This in this series, it's quite a long book study. It's a commitment that I didn't realize was going to require me to be sitting still once a week for a video. And but I love it because it causes me to not just get into the book myself, but really go deeply into the book. And then, even though I've read the chapter several times, each time I go into one of these chapters to review it, to look at it again before we're going live on this book study, I just go deeper into the experience that is available in this understanding. And the experience of being aware, I'm going to give my own experience from this chapter. First of all, not my own experience, but my highlights. The highlights that I have for this chapter are, number one, that the question of are you aware, or what is it that is aware of this experience? In my mind, that is the number one question that anyone really should ask. Is the most important question is, are you aware, or what is aware of your experience? To me, that's the most important question that a person could ask in their life. And the second most important question, or the most important part of being aware, or this chapter, the experience of being aware, is the understanding. To me, the understanding of this pointing, the understanding of what being aware means, and the experience of being aware. And then the most valuable and transforming, in my mind, the most valuable and transforming experience that someone could have as a person, as a body, is the understanding of what awareness really means in your experience as now a human, as having a human experience, and to have the understanding and the transformation, the experience of awareness. In my mind, those three things are the most valuable pieces of the puzzle that a being, a human being, and then a being can have. And I am so thankful, so grateful for Rupert, for his precise and concise pointing. And I'm also very grateful to have you, Jenny, to being part of our book club. And I consider you to be the librarian. You're like the librarian of the book club. And I would love to hear your take, your just synopsis on this chapter, or anything you want to talk about.
Okay. I'd like to start with just one sentence from quite early on in the chapter, but it has such enormous implications. So if I can just read, very short sentence.
Yes, please.
When all 7 billion of us refer to the experience of being aware, we refer to the same experience. And he stresses that it is the same experience. And the first implication of that is that there is only one awareness. There's not a Jenny awareness and a Bill awareness and a David awareness and everyone else who happens to be in the room at the moment. There is just one awareness, and it was this this argument that it is the same that really convinced me. And the reason for that is that there's a principle in the philosophy of science called Occam's razor, or it's also called the principle of parsimony, and it's absolutely common sense. It's everyone would agree with it, I think, and that is that if you have competing theories about something, then it's the simplest is the one that you go with. So if you've got 7 billion consciousnesses, which you can't differentiate, they're all the same consciousness, why 7 billion? Surely there must only be one. But that's the simplest solution. And it was really that convinced me. I came across that argument first in the writings of Bernardo Castrop, because when I first went to Rupert, he didn't, I mean, he talked about it being the same, but he didn't use that argument in quite that way. But I was so glad that he did in this book, because I think it's really important. He says that's really it's the next stage of the spiritual path. After you realize that what you are is awareness, then you start to look at what the nature of that awareness is. And the nature of that awareness is, firstly, that there's only one, is indivisible. And really the next implication of that statement is that awareness is unlimited. How can it be limited if it's the same awareness that that everyone has, that is everywhere, that is only one? There's nothing there to limit it, and that's when you when you really feel that it's such an amazing thing. It also implies, as Rupert has said, that consciousness doesn't live in the brain. It's not constrained. The mind, body, and world live inside consciousness, or arise inside consciousness. It's not the other way around, which conventional science suggests.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another important implication.
Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, it implies that actually there is no separate self, and it's that collapse of that feeling of separation which just releases so much love and happiness, and that's perhaps the most important conclusion, I guess, from that one statement.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Yeah.
I think the next thing in this chapter, which was important to me, was the gap. He talks a lot about the gap between thoughts. He says, in this pause between two thoughts, awareness becomes aware of itself. And many years ago, I came across in a lovely Sanskrit writing. I mean, I didn't read it in Sanskrit; it's in a translation. It's called Tripura Rahasya, and it's comes from the Vedantic tradition. And I came across that same concept, but they called it fleeting samadhi or natural samadhi, just the gaps between thoughts. And there was this beautiful sentence which just so attracted me at that time, when it said the wakeful state is iridescent with fleeting samadhi. Know that if one can become aware of these broken samadhis, no other samadhi need attract one. And that was really important to me, because it seemed to be a way of bringing meditation into everyday life. I used to meditate twice a day for 30 minutes, but then that was that. And then I went, and I tried so hard to put this into practice and to be aware and extend these moments, but nothing worked. And it was only when I came to Rupert and he explained that that trying doesn't work, trying to find those gaps doesn't work. It's really relaxing the focus of attention, which allows those gaps and the pure awareness that that is always there to be revealed. And that was such an amazing discovery, and beautiful, because I'd always those sentences from Tripura Rahasya had always been so important to me. So it was really lovely.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I love the reference of also the noticing of experience in the gap, and then also your description for the way Rupert, he has this gentle manner and precise pointing that allows you to see it and then experience it for yourself.
Yes. Yes.
And
it works better, I think, when you're actually face to face with him, I found. But of course, everyone here has that opportunity effectively on a webinar, because you can go onto a webinar and ask questions, ask your own questions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
somehow there's a magic that happens with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing I love about you, you must see Rupert all the time. You're right there in London. I mean, you're right near, you're in, where are you?
We go to Oxford, yes. I'm in Gloucestershire, so Oxford is the nearest for us. So I go to all his Oxford meetings. I do go to the one-day ones at Collett House in London, and I also go to all his UK retreats.
You do? You lucky thing, you.
Yes.
I would be there too if I was that close. I'd be slipping over there all the time. And the thing I love about Rupert the most, I mean, besides his pointing, is he's just a guy. He's just a beautiful guy. He doesn't set himself up as this. I mean, he really is the master pointer in the non-dual tradition. In my mind, I don't know anyone that points better, more clearly, and doesn't make himself special at all. And he's just like the words in my mind. I think he's just like Jesus, when Jesus says, you're just like Jesus is the author of A Course in Miracles through Helen Schuckman, as many know. And Jesus just says right there in the Course, I'm no different than you. I just did it first. I just did it ahead of you, but we're the same. There's no difference. I am one with the Father and you're one with me. He said that 2,000 years ago. And when you meet with Rupert, the one thing I loved about him the most, because many of you know that I was following Mooji before I found Rupert. And when you're with Mooji, he's a guru, and and I'm not saying anything wrong with that. Mostly Europeans, a lot of Europeans love gurus, and they are looking for their master, and that's great. The world needs gurus like Mooji because he's an authentic, real deal. But the thing I didn't really care for, coming from the West, I don't really want a guru. In fact, I told Mooji, I said, my guru is an inner guru, and it's Jesus right now. And then it became not so much Jesus, it became more the Holy Spirit. And then after meeting with Rupert, I love Rupert's explanation of the Holy Spirit, because his words to me are, I don't choose to personify the Holy Spirit. I refer to the Holy Spirit as my deepest love and understanding. And Rupert just brings it to you so that you're just, you can just really get it from a very personal experience, and you can understand it in a very personal way. And it's not special. No one has a special take on it anywhere. And he just brings it. He brings it for people like me to understand it. He even brings it to Deepak Chopra and great teachers to understand it at a more simple, more precise, more concise level. So I also love the way you just spoke about the principles, or the understanding is, or awareness is really experienced in the gap, and that gentle relaxing into that experience. It's a real, as palpable, it's a visceral experience that's found in between the thoughts. And we even feel it when we pause in speaking right now. You feel the awareness presents itself.
And eventually it you find it first in the gaps, but eventually it just permeates all the rest of the time when you are dealing with objects, with things in the world that we all have to deal with. Then it doesn't go away, and those objects come close to you. They're not something out there that I have to deal with, I have to cope with.
Yes.
They are myself.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's I'm glad you brought that up, Jenny, because that is a growing experience for me, for this one. And it really did take Rupert's pointing for me to have the experience of that object, that the objects or perception to not be separate from me as awareness, and the integration of those experiences. It seems to be like a growing, more present experience.
Yes.
That it just sort of like you first notice it, and then you realize, oh wow, it's more obvious more often, and until it's revealing itself in a more present experience. Yes. I'm just going to digress. I love the experience of even describing it is an experience of itself. Yes.
It is. Awareness doesn't disappear when there are words, when there's describing, when there are things happening. Awareness is there all the time.
Yes. 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 And I want to apologize to our chat feature. I didn't realize it was turned off when we first started, so that the chat feature was turned off. And Jenny, you can see the chat if you go to that sprocket. Just below the sprocket, there's a little rectangular box that says chat. You hover over that and click on it, and it'll give you the chat from the room. You see that?
I haven't quite seen that just at the moment.
It's to the right of my picture.
The right of your picture. Okay. I think I've got it now. Yeah.
And
right.
I wasn't seeing. I went to click on the chat, and no one was there, and I'm going, well, why isn't anyone here? And then I clicked on the settings, and it says that it was turned off, and usually it is turned on automatically. So I didn't bother to look, but it looks like we're good to go on the chat, and we'll pick up on the chat feature. We'll answer some of the comments that are in the chat in just a minute. And we also have a couple of people that have written into live at billfree.com and given some questions that we would like to answer for them. And thank you guys that are doing that. And also some folks, it looked like about almost 80 people actually watched the event after the live event last week. So there's about 125 people that are actively involved in the book study club. And it's just, it's very exciting for me to have this venue. And I'm thankful for all of you participating. And for many of you, you have much more experience with Rupert than I do. And you're much more, you have a deeper understanding than I do. So I don't consider myself to be holding some kind of a special position, except that I put this this venue together for all of us. And I want to thank all of you for your comments, for your writing in, for your comments on Facebook, and for those of you that are in the Facebook group, and then also for the participation of just helping people to sort things out in this new way of thinking, this new way of being. When you realize that your true self identity, we need mighty companions. We need companions of like-mindedness to sort of support us in this new way of understanding, in this new way of experiencing not only our own self, our own mind, our own psyche, but also we experience the world differently. And even to have you comment, Jenny, that your objective experience is not separate from you, and that becomes a full time experience. It's where awareness, you have the recognition that awareness is never not there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it means that there's whatever's happening, there's always peace there. I mean, there can still be feelings arising. Pain can arise if there's a physical problem, but there's always peace there, and always happiness. That's lovely, and that's why I'm so grateful to Rupert.
Yeah. The other part that I really liked in this chapter is I have little stars and asterisks and brackets and Uh, this one is that awareness is, it's in the second half of 73, where Rupert says, awareness is knowing of its own being is the simplest, most obvious, intimate, and ordinary experience which all people have in common. And because of this understanding and the way he just described this, when I'm looking in someone's eyes, even my cat's, even when I'm looking in my cat's eyes, when I have this understanding in my mind that and it's the same thing that you just said a few minutes ago, all 8 billion of us, and it doesn't even leave out all the bugs or the animals. Everyone has the same awareness. Everyone has that same experience of awareness. And to have even just a glimpse of that understanding gives great freedom to a realization that we're not separate.
Yes, yes. I see there's a comment on the board that true awakening takes a period of time. It does take a period of time, but it doesn't take a huge long time, as in some of the traditional paths, or even in it, even in different paths where you're only looking at the arguments, the prakriyas of Atmananda Krishna Menon, the paths to understanding. It's with Rupert's yoga meditations and the tantric path. It doesn't actually doesn't have to take very long. It'll be a period of years, but not 10 years, not 20 years, not that sort of length of time. It's something that's really changed very much in, I think, in the last, well, since the direct path came to people's attention.
Yeah, I appreciate that explanation, Jenny, and also the question or the comment also, because we do believe that it's a process, and it sort of is. It's an unfolding, because in my mind, and this is the difference between the direct path and the indirect path. The direct path would be is the knowing or the experience of awareness as soon as you bring someone to the question, to contemplate the question and investigate it with the inner knowing answer. What is it that is aware of this experience, or am I aware? And as soon as that question is presented, it can only be awareness that is able to see its own experience, that is able to see itself, because the mind cannot see awareness. So exactly. as soon as you find that question, or as soon as you contemplate or realize the essence of that question, you are now experiencing the direct experience.
Yes, yes, and it's available to all of us all of the time.
Yes. So it is an instant of recognition. And then it's what I would call, the Course in Miracles says this, Rupert says it often. It's veiled. It's veiled by the mind, by the activity of the mind that is a rising from even the same awareness. So awareness, the mind is veiling through from this veil. We're blocking our own experience of awareness from this veil. And it happens as believing it from the conditioned personal self-identity that we thought we were. And it's that undoing that takes place that removes the veil. It removes, it's like you've heard spiritual teachers talk about the layers of the onion, or the thinning of the veil, or the removal of the obstacles of the awareness of love's presence. And it's the removing of the belief system that keeps us from realizing and experiencing what is always present.
Yes, I think once you've recognized your true nature, then yes, the residues of ego do come up again from time to time, but there's it's always available. It's never something that it doesn't feel like a veil because anymore, because it just as soon as you see it for what it is, it is just not there anymore. It's not something you have to try to go back to in any kind of way. Really, I think there's a deepening. I think there's a deepening of understanding that happens, and then after that, it's really living one's life in a way that just naturally reflects it. And as Rupert says, that is a process that goes on and on and on. But it's a lovely process because that understanding is always there, is always available. Nothing ever removes it.
Yes, yes. And so this is the way Rupert described it in the workshop, when the question came up in Garrison, that the direct experience occurs, and as I described it, I think it happens instantly in the inquiry or investigation of the one question, or that type of question. And the Maharaj had that same question. Ramana Maharshi had that question, and Rupert, I just love the way he presents it, because it speaks to me in the language that we use. But then he also says that there's a sort of a purification that takes place, or you go back into into removing those I just call them blocks or obstacles, or the belief system that was veiling the light that we are. That it comes later even in the direct path. It comes later. There's very few individuals that have an immediate automatic enlightenment experience that don't need to go back and undo some of those egoic tendencies.
Yes, Rupert gave a lovely meditation at it was the second to last meditation at the last Buckland Hall retreat in Wales, where he said that he was going to put on his new website, come to one of Rupert Spira's retreats, The Final Disappointment, because he said, I've never had a wonderful enlightenment experience. It doesn't, it can happen like that, or it can be conceptualized like that by people, but for most people it's a series of recognitions, and it can arise so quietly that you don't notice it. And if it does arise in a kind of a big bang, which I experienced earlier in my life, then that can that can be understood wrongly, and certainly I understood it wrongly at the time, because I assumed that what enlightenment was just this wonderful feelings of happiness and oneness and so on. But it was what Rupert explained to me was that it's the peace that lies right underneath that, and that was something that really, when I came to his teaching, I started again and found again, and it was there all the time. And it was the recognition that it was there all the time. It was not something that happened. It never happened.
Yeah.
And I loved the idea of the final disappointment.
Yes, yes, yes. Or the I mean, the way Muji puts it, you you get cooked in the cooker until nothing's there, and the ultimate the ultimate final destination is just like the moth that Rupert describes in the last page of this chapter. The mind that explores these matters is like a moth that seeks a flame. The moth is attracted by the light of the flame, and this is what all of us, we're all attracted by this desire to know our identity, or to know love, or to return to love, the experience of knowing and experiencing ourself as love, as awareness, as presence. And he says the moth is attracted by the light of the flame, just as the mind is attracted by the gravitational pull of its source and essence. However, as the moth approaches, the flame becomes hotter and hotter. So that's the cooking. And the moth begins to dance around it. At once attracted and repulsed by the heat in which it intuits it will simultaneously die and discover its heart's desire. Yes.
It's a beautiful metaphor, and it comes from the Sufi tradition, which Rupert loves. Yes, it comes from a beautiful poem from Conference of the Birds, called the Conference of the Birds.
Yeah.
Sufi tradition. It's really lovely.
Yeah. And so we're like that moth, we're dying to we're dying to be burnt up into the personal self-identity becomes insignificant. The personal self-identity, we come to realize that is what we thought we were, but now we know there's something much deeper, much more profound, much more identifying with a substance that that we know is true. It goes beyond anything that we can imagine, because it's just it's a palpable experience that's indescribable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. He talks towards the end of the chapter about words and how there just aren't words to describe what we truly are.
Yes. Yes. Well, we had a couple of questions. I want to bring up a couple of questions, unless you have something else you want to add. Do you have anything?
Not really.
You want to add?
I think you had some excellent questions, Phil.
So we have a question from Monique, and it says, "Dear Bill, this is a question that keeps coming back. Awareness assumes temporary thoughts and forms. This awareness is a peaceful, borderless field. How can this aware field not know of the world's misery? Question mark. Or said differently, why does it assume the form of like war?" like war. There is no other substance present in experience than God's infinite being. The screen never experiences the multiplicity and diversity of finite experience. I'm sure this has to do with the way of seeing things. Quote, the existence of individual selves and objects is only real from the illusory point of view of one of those selves. How to approach this, except continuing exploring? I would be grateful if you say something about that. And Jenny, I sent this to Jenny, and thank you, Jenny, for looking at this. And Jenny provided, she's our librarian, and she provided a couple of videos that Rupert speaks to this question right here. And so I'm going to invite all of us just to watch this little 7-minute clip that was provided by Jenny, and it's titled, Why is There Manifestation? And this is Rupert's answer to this question. So you guys enjoy. I'll come back after about 7 minutes and we'll carry on with our show. But here's the video that Rupert spoke on this.
It's just one part of the previous metaphor that I've been getting stuck on. That is that so infinite consciousness, it's the sacrifices that infinite consciousness has to forget, overlook the knowing of itself in order for the manifestation of an illusion. I'm not.
You see, infinite something that is infinite can only know something that is infinite. There's no room in the infinite for the finite. Imagine a space, an infinite space, a vast, borderless, empty space, and then imagine a finite object appearing in the middle of that infinite space. The finite object would displace a little bit of the infinite space. A little bit of the infinite space would now be finite. Yes? At that moment, the infinite space would no longer be infinite. Yes? Because there's a finite object. In other words, you can't have a finite object in an infinite space. You can only have a finite object in a finite space. So for this, exactly the same way, the infinite can only know the infinite. God's infinite being can only know God's infinite being. Therefore, if God's infinite being wants to know something that seems to be other than itself, in other words, if it wants to bring a world into manifestation, bring something finite into manifestation, God's infinite being, infinite consciousness, must consent to forget itself. It must fall asleep.
But why? That's what I'm wondering, is why does it want to bring forth something? Why does it want to bring forth the world? Why is this happening?
The why question, this is very important. The why question cannot be answered. It's the wrong question. We cannot ask the why question of consciousness, because it is the mind that asks the why question of consciousness. But the why question presumes duality. Yeah? It presumes cause and effect. Therefore, implicit in the why question is time and cause and duality. Mm-hmm. So the mind, by asking consciousness, why do you do this? The mind is presuming that consciousness, infinite consciousness, is subject to the duality that it, the mind, believes is real. So it is the mind that superimposes its own limitations on consciousness and then says, why are you limited? And consciousness says, I'm not. So it's important to understand this, because if I were to give you I could give you a consoling answer, like, why does consciousness manifest the world? Because it wants to, or whatever reason I gave
evolve,
you, because it wants to evolve, or because it's lonely, or because it, whatever it is. These answers are, it's like giving the mind a lollipop to suck on. It just puts the mind to sleep again. They're consolations to the mind. But they don't really put an end to the why question. They just put the why question to sleep. They don't uproot it. At some stage, the mind will come up again in a few hours or a few weeks or a few months. The mind will come up again with the why question, because these consolation answers are not satisfactory. They don't put an end to the why question. The only way it's possible to put an end to the why question is to understand that it's not legitimate to ask the why question of consciousness. Why does consciousness bring manifestation into existence? Let's say there was an answer to that question, and let's say the answer was X. The reason consciousness brings manifestation into existence is because of X. But X is already in manifestation. X would be a reason. But that is already the manifestation. So we then have to ask, but why X? And then we say, well, because of Y. And we just go back and back in an infinite regression. It's not possible to satisfactorily answer the why question, and I would encourage you not to stop short of this understanding, not to believe any relative answer to the why question. The very best, the best answer I know to the why question, why does consciousness bring manifestation into apparent existence? It would be an overflowing of love. For no reason. Why does a woman want to have a child? It's just to make the love that is inside of her manifest on the outside of her, but for no reason. It's just like an overflowing of love. That's the best relative answer I know.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that video. And there's a couple more videos. I'm just going to go ahead, and I think I can give you guys a link for these two videos that Jenny sent over. So I'm going to just copy these for you and put them on the chat, and you can look at them yourselves. You can watch them, and that's one of them. And then there's another one here that was also just as good. It was the one I just gave you a link to is Why Does God Allow Suffering? That is a great one. And this next one is Why is the one we just watched, a piece of what we just watched. Why is there manifestation? And I'll give you that link also right here. And thank you, Jenny, for making that available to us. And you are amazing, amazing. There's an interesting thing that I wanted to highlight in the Course in Miracles, you guys, for this question. And it's so good. I mean, the Course, you know, it's pretty big. It's a pretty big book, and understanding it is I read it every day. I love it. I love Rupert. They together. I love many other teachers out there, but the Course in Miracles, Rupert Spira, these guys are my go-to places for understanding and illumination of truth. And here's a paragraph that Jesus writes in the Course in Miracles. He says, "The world asks but one question, is this: of these illusions, which of them are true? Which ones establish peace and offer joy, and which can bring escape from all the pain of which the world is made? Whatever form the question takes, its purpose is the same. It asks but to establish sin or separation is real, and answers in the form of preference. Which sin do you prefer? And so that's kind of like what Rupert said in his answer. It's not a question that can actually be asked, because the question is coming from the illusion. The question is coming from the idea that the finite is the truth, or is real. And it's like I think he describes in one of those videos that you sent over, Jenny, he describes it like Mary. It's like Mary asking. It's like Mary asking, why did this dream happen? And the dream is happening in Jane's mind, right?
Yes. That's such a powerful metaphor. The dream, the dream metaphor, because we know that we can't choose our dreams. If we could choose our dreams, we would never have nightmares. We'd only have wonderful dreams, but we can't. And equally, awareness doesn't choose its dreams. It's another way of looking at it. Slightly a little bit down from the mountain, but still quite a good way, I think.
Yeah. So that was in my mind, it's saying the same thing from a different tradition. The tradition of Course in Miracles, it's saying the same thing. It's of this illusion, which part of it's true. It's like the illusion asking itself, or asking you the question of what part of this illusion do I like the most, and why is it happening? Right?
Yes.
Do we have any other questions? Yeah, that was a beautiful video, and now you guys have both of them. So they're short and they're perfect in answer to this question. There was another question I would like to just give a reference to from Susan. She says, I am experiencing some difficulties with lack of focus on subject-object duality. Daily life, like driving, has become difficult. I am in that empty space of pure awareness, and this body-mind doesn't function like it used to. I need some clues on how to handle this transitional phase. I will be at work during the streaming, but will listen to the replay. Would you like to answer that, Jenny?
I think it's very easy to get stuck in a place where you sink down and down and down, as Rupert describes in his ever-widening circles of being, and you get to that beautiful place. The Sanskrit name is Nirvikalpa Samadhi, but it's so lovely that it's tempting to do that, or at least do a bit of it, even if you don't go all the way down. That you don't want to go out again into the world, and that was something that that I experienced initially, because that was my training. In fact, in mantra meditation, that it produced that, and Rupert's method just continued it. And Rupert was quite firm with me about saying, no, look outwards now towards the world. You don't need, you've understood your true nature. You don't need you don't need to go back down anymore. Just do it when you like it, but not in normal life. So don't be afraid to go out into normal life and really enjoy it. the peace that you found there in Nirvikalpa Samadhi will go with you. And if sometimes it doesn't, then just relax back into being aware of being aware. But I think it is a difficulty for it can be for some people, and was for me. So I do feel for her, but I would certainly recommend that she try some of Rupert's yoga meditations, particularly the box set of yoga meditations is very good. A transparent body, luminous world. It's beautiful.
Good, good, awesome. Thank you. Perfect timing to close the show with that answer. And thank you, Jenny Beal, for being our guest on the show this week. I totally loved it, and I look forward to you coming back on the show in the new year. We have one more show this year. Next week, we'll have Annika Borges on the show live. She's borrowing her daughter's laptop, and she's going to come live for us. She is such a great guest 2 weeks ago, and it's just my joy to bring her back so you guys can see her and appreciate her. And she is also a very illumined student and teacher of the pointing of Rupert, and I just love having you on the show next week, Annika. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny, for being our guest on the show this week, and thank you for being our consummate librarian. I really appreciate you. Namaste, and thank you all for joining us. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.